So before you actually start running tests on your site, it's good to start by looking at some fundamental aspects of what you're trying to achieve. Why do you actually have a website? If you're going to test the key areas of your site, you need to look at sort of the basics and look at what metrics you've got for knowing your site is succeeding. So success in the context of A/B testing involves taking the answers to the question of your site's ultimate purpose and turning it into something a bit more precise. These metrics, such as well, the number of sales. On an e-commerce site, the metrics are pretty obvious. How much you're selling. You might be trying to establish an increase in the number of signups to a newsletter. You may just be interested in page views. If you're a blog, you may be interested in the number of articles being read, or how much your message is being liked and shared if you're trying to get a particular message across. You might be trying to improve the metrics of your bounce rates. Why are people leaving your site at particular points? If your whole purpose is to get people to complete something, then you'll be looking at how many people actually fill in and complete a form. Or you might just be looking at number of clicks generally. So you need to know all about your site's analytics. You need to understand them. And until you can understand them, you can't really compare what you've done against how things were. You can't test the effects properly without knowing and observing and actually analysing your analytics to see how you're affecting things. So without that kind of benchmark, you're creating tests which don't have much worth. You need to know your different audience types. They might be crucial to testing. You might need to test a particular segment of your audience. It's good to know about the goals and data funnels that might be set up in the analytics, and the goals themselves might be things that you're trying to increase and improve. They might be the metric. You may have set up a goal for people just to get to the contact page, so you might be looking at that. So you need to know how that's scoring and how you might improve it. Data funnels are actually following the entire paths, so you might be trying to increase the traffic through a particular funnel through your site. So that might be another kind of metric that you're trying to analyze with A/B testing. So you need to use your analytics as a tool to identify problem areas in your site, areas that you want to examine and test with new ideas to see if you can improve them. People might be clicking on a newsletter sign-up button, for example, but they might not then follow on by completing the form. So why is that? That's the kind of thing you're looking out for to test and to experiment. The same goes with shopping carts and abandonment and people giving up on checkout. If you've got figures that are suggesting this is happening at particular points, then you need to look at that point and use a few tests just to see if you can tease out what the problem is. Why aren't people following calls to action? What's the problem? Why aren't they signing up for things or finding out more when they're invited to? Is there a problem with wording? Is something putting people off or confusing them? And if you're just identifying and seeing pages which have got really big bounce rates, why is that? What is it about the page that's causing that? Again, the kind of thing that's flagging up areas to test. I remember I did a bookshop site, and people were quite willingly and happily going to a page which had a particular series of books on it, but they weren't then actually going to individual titles in that series, and this was a bit odd. It was quite clear from the analytics that there was a lot of traffic going to these pages, but then there was nobody going to the actual products, and the data helped identify this. And this became evident because the products, the books that were at the bottom of the page in a very confusing grid. They didn't have prices on them, and they didn't look like they were anything you might be interested in clicking on. So it was quite interesting to improve that process and see how the data changed and how the people going to the product pages improved when we'd improved that step. So you need to devise your test hypothesis to work out what you're going to do. These variations, they're not just chosen at random. You're going to have to really sit down and consider the problem and what you're going to test. Now you could do this by you doing a bit of user testing, getting people to actually sit down and talk through their their experience with the site. Get them to go through achieving goals, going through particular funnels, steps in your site, just to understand how they're doing things and what people's understanding is. You may also want to do some stakeholder interviews or interviews with key users who might come up with all kinds of things that you hadn't considered, and use those as a plan for testing. I mean, would a picture of a kitten assist donations? These are things you could kind of you could approach with people just to get their reactions in these interviews. Does taking away the main navigation reduce abandonment? I mean, that's the kind of thing you could be trying to test, and that could be your hypothesis. You need to actually apply some deeper thought to what you're trying to do and see if you can get to the crux of the issue. You need to know your audience and know who it is you're going to target and who you're not. You may not need to actually test certain segments of the audience. So in edge case here in this example, you probably wouldn't have to do any A/B testing to improve things for the career section, because those people who are trying to find a job on your site, well, that group is going to work harder than anyone else to find what it is they're after. However, testing the ease of finding a particular attorney, this is a law site, is going to be much more important. It's mission critical, so that's the kind of area you're going to look at testing, not careers. You have to know when to test. Now, if you're in a redesign process, you can test as you go. It doesn't always have to be the traditional A/B testing. In this example here was a kind of A/B test of preference test, where we just put up two examples just to give us a feel that we were going in the right direction. The one on the left was the redesign, one on the right was the original site. So we just wanted to check very quickly, which one do you prefer, A or B? Well, we got the result we wanted. Would have been quite devastated if they preferred the one on the right, but it's an example of a quick test that you can just do to make sure you're going in the right direction. But you can set up traditional A/B testing on a prototype site before it goes live. You're going to have a much smaller sample size, but it's better than nothing. It could be a useful guidance to get you going. And you can iterate with real data once the site's live and you've got a lot more traffic. In the next lesson, we're going to look at what it is you should be testing.